Hi all, Harley and I very much enjoyed our first mindfulness and negotiation class. You all have your reading packets, or if you didn't get one yet, please do get it at the Copy Center. There's one for you. Today we went through our readings from class 1, and there was the video on Blackboard, and each of the days you'll want to check the Blackboard for a video as well as these readings. We explored getting to yes a bit and moving from positions to interests. One of the takeaways was to begin to have it where when you're talking with somebody and they begin to express their position, whether it's, when to leave on a trip or where to go for dinner or whatever it might be, we're constantly, spouting out our positions on things to be able to, even if you're totally good with what they're offering, to maybe say, oh, that's interesting, why? And certainly if it rubs you the wrong way, to say something along those lines, to try to get beneath the surface of that position to move into better understanding one's interests. It's a wonderful way to engage in conversation quite often, even when one doesn't perceive it as a negotiation. It's just a useful way to interact with others so that we can gain greater clarity as to where they're coming from. Because so often at the surface, it's unclear, or we might begin to read their minds or project something that isn't quite in alignment with reality. And then we begin to, slowly but surely deviate. So ask why. And there's many ways of framing it. Become interested, get curious as to their positions on things. We began to touch a little bit on Chris Voss. We talked about the video. We brought the idea of tactical empathy into the conversation today. We'll continue to explore that. We read a little bit from Maria Konikova's piece on mindfulness and playing poker, which really created the opportunity for us to sort of see that, okay, a little bit of a deeper dive as to why this mindfulness practice can be helpful in a domain like negotiating with others and playing poker and or whatever the nature of that dynamic is. It's one thing to read it, it's another thing to begin to experience it more directly, and that will only happen through the practicing of mindfulness, which is why in class we did a very short practice, and which is why it is that you have the opportunity every day using the app to be able to listen to a particular mindfulness practice. For today, and what you'll do between now and tomorrow, it's practicing a very classic and prominent and very popular mindfulness practice known as focused attention. That snarky email, the last of the readings that we'll look at tomorrow, Kiki spoke to, an interest in getting to better understand and perhaps, attend to some, he didn't say skepticism, but, that sort of, what's going on here with this practice? How can this be helpful? Is this relevant to me? Great questions to be asking. And Harley, in some ways, points to his own experience with people sharing that perspective with him. We're interested in you taking out of our class in terms of the negotiation techniques and in terms of the mindfulness practices and in terms of sort of understanding how they ultimately fold together and always have been part of the, the same of a piece. But when we're less mindfully aware or we're less skillful in terms of an understanding of negotiation strategy, we're just not as effective at bringing about outcomes, or not likely to be as effective as we could be. For tomorrow's readings, there's a reading from this wonderful book, The Untethered Soul, a chapter on the voice inside your head. We think you'll really enjoy it and get a lot out of it. There's also going to be a reading from Getting Past No, Negotiating with Difficult People by William Ury, one of the authors of Getting to Yes. And we chose this particular chapter because we think it'll be very instructive. And even in today's conversation, some of the elements of what's brought into this chapter were spoken to. There's also a chapter from the book, The Mindful Law Student, on negotiation. And that's also going to be pointing in the direction of Professor Riskin's law review article, a little taste of it, and these core concerns that we'll talk about tomorrow in class, and then a piece on mindful listening. And we'll be talking about mindful listening in particular tomorrow. And the opportunity between now and tomorrow, as a reminder, is to practice being clear and kind. And what that means is is something that we'll be exploring. We might have an understanding of what kind means, which may not be actually what kind means in this context. We might have an understanding of what clear means, and it may or may not be in alignment with what we're sort of zeroing in on. And perhaps importantly, even if we have a sense of what kind and what clear means, to bring them together sometimes creates like they're almost, in some ways, can be at times almost magnetically charged in ways that they tend not to. We're either clear and not very kind, or, as Harley spoke to, the person on the receiving end isn't really open and receptive to what we're saying, clear as we may be, because there's something about the way we're communicating and the way they're receiving it that has them shut down a little bit. Or we're very kind, and as Harley also gave us an example, but not so clear, and that may not actually be so kind after all. So practice in your various interactions with others, just having on your mind that reminder to be clear and to be kind, and then just sort of see how it begins to play itself out. We also were talking about the value of the slower, deeper breath to bring about a more relaxed state. Now, for some of you, this may be like a no-brainer, of course. For some of you, it might be like, really? What? For some of you, it might be this touchy-feely thing, and what's the utility of it? Know that we will not be making the breathing techniques or the relaxation techniques a central aspect to our class, though it will be a part of some of the readings, and it will be part of what we explore in terms of some experiential practices. Know, though, that much of what we'll be sharing comes from and is reinforced in books like The Oxygen Advantage, Just Breathe, The Healing Power of the Breath, The Art of Breathing, Conscious Breathing, Discovering the Power of the Breath, The Breathing Cure. Some of you may be familiar with Wim Hof and the Wim Hof breathing, and the list goes on and on of books. Ultimately, at bottom, they all rest upon a premise, which is that the breath is a very powerful vehicle of physiological engagement, that it tends to do what it does because we're reacting to our environment, and that we can, in fact, turn that around and be more deliberate and intentional with our breathing that can then affect a meaningful physiological shift that serves us well. And it begins with, we could say, a slower, deeper breath. There are an enormous number of variations on the breathing practices, and they serve slightly different objectives. Some can be more alert, waking us up to be more vigilant. Many, and the ones that we'll be exploring, because usually that's not a problem in the middle of a negotiation that's gone south. We're quite vigilant, we're quite alert. Rather, it's, can we be more, not relaxed for the sake of being at peace, but rather can we tamp down on the agitation that's getting in the way of being able to be more effective in what we're doing. So just a reminder, in addition to practicing clear and kind, in addition to asking why, and we're also interested in taking a few slower, deeper breaths at various moments during the day just to begin to experiment with it. And it could be when you get to a stop sign, it could be when you're getting ready for bed, it could be when you get out of your car or get into your car. And so really, this is for you to sort of maybe pick a time for this week where you will sort of take a moment and take a slower, deeper breath, or a series of slower, deeper breaths. And we'll talk more about that. And then lastly, what's lastly? Is there a lastly? I can't remember. So we'll assume that there's, lastly, the mindfulness practice itself, the focused attention practice. We took just a minute or two in class to do the focused attention practice. I just want to say a couple things about the focused attention practice and all of the practices that we'll be learning. First, they are invitations for you to practice. Some people, for whatever reason, doesn't resonate with them. So at least you'll be learning about the value of these practices, even if for whatever reason you find that it's not your thing, and that's okay. We're interested in the understanding and the recognizing possibilities, and to begin to explore in ways that are fruitful to us, and we're all individuals. In that regard, let me say that the focused attention practice, it really sort of says focus on the sensations of the breath, and that's what many will do. But very importantly, it's not about the breath, and it's not about focusing on the breath. Slowing down the breath to feel more relaxed, that does involve the breath. There's no two ways around that. There's other ways of feeling more relaxed than slowing down the breath. But if we're going to do a slowing down the breath practice, you got to be slowing down the breath. But the focused attention practice is about focusing attention on an object. And the object can be anything. It can be a sound. It can be something that you feel. It could be something that you, in terms of your hands, for example. You can rest attention on the sensations of the hands. It could be something that you're looking at, a picture, a rock, a candle, a part of a spot on the rug. It's focusing attention on an object. That's what's important if one is going to do the focused attention practice. And as we'll discuss over the course of the week, that's what we're doing all the time. We're focusing attention on somebody who's talking. We're focusing attention on a counterparty in a negotiation. We're focusing attention on a loved one at a conversation at home over the dinner table. We're always focusing our attention. But the thing is that our attention, even though it may start trained on that person or on that reading, very quickly darts off. And we don't realize it. And sooner or later, it probably finds its way back. But oh, the emotional roller coaster we might ride in between. Oh, the data that we may miss out on that's right in front of us to be received, and the impact and the implications that can have. So what's most important about the focused attention practice, including the one that you do today, is that you're focusing on an object. So when you're listening to me guiding that practice, whether you do it for 6 minutes or 12 minutes or 18 minutes, and that's entirely up to you, you can replace the breath with any object. And then, as the instruction says, when you notice your mind wandering, bringing your attention back to that object. Please do have the very first practice you do be the 6-minute practice, because it does offer you some general information about practice. But also feel free to do a longer practice or to sit longer after that formal guidance ends. Alrighty, hope this is helpful. Please know that you're always welcome to reach out via email or to come by. I'm in office B353 on the 3rd floor of the library. If you have any questions about the readings, about what we're learning, content-wise, about the practices. Wishing you all well. Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow.